Every single morning, 27 million Americans wake up exhausted, not tired from poor sleep, but bone-deep exhaustion that coffee can't touch, rest doesn't fix, and willpower cannot override. They drag themselves through the day feeling like they're moving through water, thinking slower, feeling colder, gaining weight despite eating less. And 60% of them, according to data from the American Thyroid Association, have absolutely no idea that a small butterfly-shaped gland in their neck has quietly stopped doing its job. I'm talking about thyroid failure. And I need to be direct with you right now. If you're over 50, the statistical likelihood that you have some degree of thyroid dysfunction is approximately 1 in 8 if you're a woman, 1 in 15 if you're a man. Those numbers climb dramatically after age 60. But here's what makes this particularly insidious. The thyroid doesn't fail overnight. It fails in millimeters. It whispers warnings for months, sometimes years, before it screams. And those whispers, those 5 specific signals I'm about to describe, are being ignored by 99% of people experiencing them right now because nobody has explained what they actually mean. Subscribe to Dr. Waterling right now and hit that like button. We're building this channel on one principle. The system makes money when you stay sick, not when you get better. What I'm about to tell you, nobody in a 12-minute office visit is going to explain. There is no billing code for teaching you to recognize thyroid failure before it becomes a crisis requiring lifetime medication. Your next appointment will not include this education, but you need it because the window between early dysfunction and irreversible damage narrows with every month of ignored symptoms. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 58 years old when she walked into my office convinced she was losing her mind. She described it as living in fog. She would stand in her kitchen holding a coffee cup and forget why she'd poured it. She'd read the same paragraph 4 times without retaining a single word. Her husband asked her questions and she'd hear the words but couldn't process them fast enough to respond. She told me, "Doctor, I think I have early dementia. My mother had Alzheimer's. I'm terrified this is how it starts." Margaret had seen her primary care physician 6 weeks earlier. She described her symptoms. She mentioned the weight gain, 23 pounds in 8 months despite eating the same diet she'd maintained for a decade. She mentioned feeling cold all the time, wearing sweaters in summer, needing 2 blankets when her husband needed none. She mentioned constipation that had become so severe she was taking laxatives 3 times a week. And her doctor, a competent, well-meaning physician working within a system that gives him 8 minutes per patient, ran a basic metabolic panel, saw nothing alarming, and told her it was probably menopause and stress. I ordered a complete thyroid panel, not just TSH, the screening test most doctors rely on, but TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies. The results came back 1 week later. Her TSH was 4.8. That number falls within the reference range most labs consider normal, which is 0.4 to 4.5. But her free T3, the active thyroid hormone that actually does the work in your cells, was at the bottom of the range. Her thyroid antibodies were elevated, indicating Hashimoto's thyroiditis, an autoimmune condition attacking her thyroid gland. Margaret did not have dementia. She had subclinical hypothyroidism progressing toward overt thyroid failure. And she had been experiencing textbook warning signs for 18 months that nobody recognized as thyroid-related because most people, including many physicians, do not understand what early thyroid dysfunction looks like. Here's the reality. Your thyroid gland weighs approximately 20 grams, about the weight of 4 nickels. But those 20 grams regulate your entire metabolic rate, your body temperature, your heart rate, your digestive speed, your brain function, your energy production, and your ability to maintain healthy weight. When it fails, every single system in your body slows down. And the 5 warning signs I'm about to describe are not vague symptoms that could mean anything. They are specific, consistent, recognizable patterns that appear in early thyroid dysfunction with remarkable predictability. The problem is, these symptoms develop so gradually that your brain normalizes them. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly feel exhausted. exhausted, the exhaustion creeps in over months. You tell yourself you're just getting older, sleeping poorly, stressed from work. You don't suddenly gain 30 pounds. You gain 2 pounds one month, 3 pounds the next, and by the time you've gained 20, you've convinced yourself it's lack of exercise or eating too much. Your brain is designed to adapt to gradual change, which means it's designed to miss gradual decline. Let me explain exactly what's happening inside your body when your thyroid begins to fail, because once you understand the mechanism, these warning signs will make perfect sense. Your thyroid gland produces two primary hormones. T4, which is thyroxine, the storage form of thyroid hormone, and a small amount of T3, which is triiodothyronine, the active form that actually enters your cells and drives metabolic function. About 80% of your thyroid output is T4. That T4 travels through your bloodstream to your liver, kidneys, and other tissues, where enzymes convert it to T3 by removing one iodine atom. That T3 then binds to receptors inside your cell's nuclei and activates genes controlling metabolism, protein synthesis, and energy production. Think of T4 as lumber sitting in a warehouse and T3 as the finished furniture built from that lumber. You need the warehouse full of raw material, but what matters is whether that material is actually being converted and used. When your thyroid starts to fail, several things can go wrong. Your thyroid might produce less T4. Your body might fail to efficiently convert T4 to T3. Your cells might develop resistance to thyroid hormone similar to insulin resistance. Or your immune system might attack your thyroid tissue, gradually destroying its capacity to produce hormones at all. The most common cause in the United States and other developed nations is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, an autoimmune condition where your immune system mistakes thyroid tissue for a foreign invader and attacks it. Over years or decades, this attack gradually reduces the gland's functional capacity. The second most common cause is simple iodine deficiency, though this is less prevalent in regions with iodized salt. The third category includes medications that interfere with thyroid function, particularly lithium, amiodarone, and certain immune checkpoint inhibitors used in cancer treatment. But here's what you need to understand. Regardless of the underlying cause, early thyroid dysfunction creates the same predictable cascade of metabolic slowdown, and that slowdown announces itself through 5 specific warning signs that appear in a recognizable sequence. Warning sign number 1. You feel exhausted despite adequate sleep, and that exhaustion has a specific quality that distinguishes it from ordinary tiredness. When your thyroid function declines, your cells literally produce less ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, the energy currency your cells use to perform every function. Imagine trying to run your house on 60% power instead of full electricity. The lights dim, appliances run slower, everything requires more effort. That's what's happening in your body when thyroid hormone drops. But here's the specific characteristic that identifies this as thyroid-related rather than ordinary fatigue. You feel most exhausted in the morning, even after 8 or 9 hours of sleep. You wake up feeling like you worked a night shift. Your limbs feel heavy, your thinking feels sluggish, and this exhaustion doesn't respond to coffee, rest, or motivation. You can will yourself to move, but it feels like moving through resistance, like your body is fighting you. Conventional tiredness improves with rest and worsens with exertion. Thyroid-related exhaustion is constant. It's there when you wake, persists throughout the day, and does not substantially improve even after you've rested. People describe it as bone-deep fatigue, as though their batteries are permanently discharged. I had a patient named Robert, 52 years old, a construction foreman who'd worked physical jobs his entire adult life. He came to me because he could no longer finish a normal workday. He said, "Doctor, I used to frame houses in August heat and come home ready to play with my kids. Now I supervise from a truck and I'm so tired by 3 in the afternoon I want to sleep in the front seat." That specific pattern, exhaustion disproportionate to actual exertion, is thyroid dysfunction until proven otherwise. Warning sign number 2. You gain weight despite eating the same or less food, and the weight accumulates in a specific distribution pattern. When thyroid hormone drops, your basal metabolic rate, the number of calories your body burns at rest just maintaining basic functions, decreases by 20% to 40%. That's not a small change. For a person burning 1,800 calories per day at rest, a 30% reduction means they're now burning only 1,160 calories. If their food intake remains constant at 1,800 calories, they're now in a 540 calorie daily surplus. Over 1 month, that surplus translates to approximately 4 pounds of fat gain. Over 6 months, 24 pounds. But here's the critical detail most people miss. Thyroid-related weight gain is not distributed evenly. It accumulates preferentially around the midsection, particularly the lower abdomen and flanks, and in the upper back between the shoulder blades. The face becomes puffy, particularly around the eyes and jawline. The hands and feet swell, making rings tight and shoes uncomfortable. This distribution pattern occurs because thyroid hormone regulates sodium and water retention through effects on kidney function and vascular permeability. The weight feels different from ordinary fat. People describe it as heavy, dense, and stubborn. When you press into it, it doesn't compress easily. That's because thyroid-related weight gain includes significant fluid retention in addition to fat accumulation. You're not just gaining adipose tissue, you're retaining several pounds of excess fluid in your tissues, a condition called myxedema in severe cases. I need you to understand something critical here. If you have gained 15 to 25 pounds over 6 to 12 months without substantial changes to your eating or activity level, that is not normal aging. That is not inevitable middle-age weight gain. That is your metabolism slowing down, and thyroid dysfunction is the single most common correctable cause. Warning sign number 3. You feel cold when others feel comfortable, particularly in your hands, feet, and the tip of your nose. Thyroid hormone regulates your basal body temperature through effects on metabolic heat production. When your cells produce less ATP, they also produce less waste heat as a byproduct of that energy production. Your core body temperature drops by 1/2 to 1 full degree Fahrenheit. That might sound trivial, but it creates profound discomfort. People with declining thyroid function describe feeling cold from the inside out. They wear sweaters when others wear short sleeves. They need extra blankets at night. Their hands and feet feel perpetually cold to the touch, even when ambient temperature is comfortable. When they shake hands, other people notice how cold their skin feels. Here's the diagnostic detail that distinguishes thyroid-related cold intolerance from poor circulation or Raynaud's phenomenon. The cold sensation is constant and generalized rather than triggered by specific temperature exposure, and it's accompanied by reduced sweating. Your body stops producing adequate sweat even during exertion or heat exposure because the metabolic signaling for sweat gland activation is thyroid dependent. I had a patient named Linda who came to me in July wearing a cardigan in my office with the air conditioning set to a comfortable 72 degrees. She told me, "Doctor, my husband jokes that I've become cold-blooded like a lizard. I sit in the sun in the backyard trying to warm up." When I checked her basal body temperature by having her measure oral temperature immediately upon waking before getting out of bed, it was averaging 96, 8 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal is 97, 8 to 98. 2, first thing in the morning. That 1 degree deficit explained everything. Warning sign number 4. Your thinking becomes slower and your memory becomes unreliable, with a specific pattern of cognitive dysfunction. Thyroid hormone is essential for normal brain function. It regulates neurotransmitter synthesis, particularly serotonin and dopamine. It maintains the myelin sheath around nerve fibers that allows rapid signal transmission. It supports synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to form and modify connections. When thyroid hormone drops, all of these processes slow down. The cognitive dysfunction has specific characteristics. You experience brain fog, a term patients use consistently to describe difficulty maintaining focus and processing information at normal speed. You read a paragraph and realize you didn't absorb a single sentence. You have conversations where you hear the words but can't formulate responses quickly enough. You walk into rooms and forget why you went there. You struggle to find common words in conversation, creating awkward pauses while you search your memory for vocabulary you've used your entire life. Short-term memory becomes particularly unreliable. You forget appointments. You can't remember whether you took your medication this morning. You put something down and cannot recall where you placed it 30 seconds later. This is not dementia. This is not Alzheimer's disease. This is reversible metabolic cognitive dysfunction caused by insufficient thyroid hormone reaching brain tissue. The pattern that distinguishes this from early dementia is that it develops relatively quickly over months rather than years, and it's accompanied by other metabolic symptoms, particularly fatigue and cold intolerance. If you're experiencing isolated cognitive decline without fatigue, weight changes, or temperature dysregulation, that requires different investigation. But if your thinking has slowed down over 6 to 12 months and you're also exhausted and cold all the time, your thyroid deserves immediate evaluation. Margaret, the patient I mentioned earlier, described the cognitive symptoms as the most frightening aspect of her experience. She said, "I thought I was watching myself disappear. I could feel my mind not working right, and I was terrified it was permanent." When we corrected her thyroid function, her cognitive clarity returned completely within 8 weeks. Warning sign number 5. Your bowel movements become infrequent and difficult despite adequate fiber and water intake. Thyroid hormone regulates the speed of intestinal motility, the wave-like contractions that move digestive contents through your system. When thyroid function drops, these contractions slow down dramatically. Food and waste spend longer time in your intestines. More water gets absorbed back into your body, making stool harder and drier. The transit time from eating to elimination, which should be 18 to 24 hours, extends to 48, 72, or even 96 hours. This creates constipation with specific characteristics. You have bowel movements every 3 to 5 days rather than daily. When you do go, the stool is hard, dry, and difficult to pass. You strain. You spend extended time on the toilet without productive results, and this persists despite drinking adequate water, eating fiber-rich foods, and taking over-the-counter laxatives. The constipation caused by hypothyroidism is stubborn. Fiber supplements and stool softeners provide minimal benefit because the underlying problem is not stool consistency or bulk. It's inadequate propulsive force in the intestinal wall. The smooth muscle simply isn't contracting with sufficient frequency or strength to move contents along at normal speed. I had a patient named Barbara who told me she'd been constipated for so long she couldn't remember what normal bowel function felt like. She said, "Doctor, I go once every 4 days if I'm lucky. I've tried every fiber supplement, prune juice, magnesium, senna tea. Nothing works for more than a day or two. When I checked her thyroid function, her TSH was 6.2, and her free T3 was in the bottom 10% of the reference range. Once we addressed her thyroid, her bowel function normalized within 3 weeks, without any fiber supplements or laxatives. Now here's what the conventional medical system will do when you present with these symptoms. And this is where you need to understand how institutional medicine fails people experiencing early thyroid dysfunction. You go to your doctor complaining of fatigue. You've been exhausted for months. You're gaining weight. You're cold all the time. Your thinking feels slow. You're constipated. Your doctor, who is a competent, well-trained physician operating within a system that gives them 6 to 8 minutes per patient, listens to your description and thinks these are non-specific symptoms that could indicate depression, stress, poor sleep habits, or normal aging. They order a basic screening test called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. This is the hormone your pituitary gland produces to tell your thyroid to work harder. When your thyroid starts to fail, your pituitary increases TSH production, trying to whip the failing gland into producing more hormone. So elevated TSH suggests thyroid dysfunction. Here's the problem. Most labs consider TSH levels between 0, 4, and 4, 5 to be normal. But functional medicine practitioners and endocrinologists specializing in thyroid thyroid disorders recognize that optimal TSH is actually between 1, 0 and 2. 0, a TSH of 3, 5 or 4, 2, which falls within the reference range, already indicates that your thyroid is struggling. Your pituitary is having to push harder than optimal to maintain barely adequate hormone output. So your doctor sees a TSH of 3, 8, calls it normal, and tells you there's nothing wrong with your thyroid. They might suggest you're depressed and offer an antidepressant. They might tell you to exercise more and eat less. They might say it's just menopause or aging or stress. And you leave that appointment feeling dismissed, unheard, and convinced that your symptoms must be in your head because the blood test was normal. But here's what that doctor didn't test. They didn't check your free T3, the active hormone doing the actual work in your cells. They didn't check your free T4, the storage hormone. They didn't check reverse T3, an inactive form of thyroid hormone that can block T3 from working effectively. They didn't check thyroid antibodies to see if your immune system is attacking your thyroid gland. A complete thyroid evaluation requires all of these tests because TSH alone misses the majority of early dysfunction cases. I have seen hundreds of patients with normal TSH and critically low free T3. I have seen patients with adequate T4 production but poor conversion to T3, creating cellular hypothyroidism despite normal thyroid gland output. I have seen patients with elevated reverse T3 essentially blocking their active hormone from working, creating functional hypothyroidism with completely normal standard labs. The system you rely on for your health is not designed to catch these cases. It is designed to identify overt thyroid failure, the stage where your thyroid has essentially stopped working entirely, and you require lifetime hormone replacement. But by the time you reach that stage, you have spent months or years feeling progressively worse while being told nothing is wrong. There is no billing code for comprehensive thyroid evaluation in a preventive context. There is no revenue in teaching you to recognize early dysfunction. And there is definitely no profit in addressing the root causes of thyroid failure through nutrition, stress management, and environmental toxin reduction, all of which can slow or reverse early stage dysfunction.